Morning to you. God bless you today. Getting close to Christmas time and also close to New Year's. And this is the time of year we start thinking about making resolutions for the coming year. And I want to say some very practical things to the one who may be, again, just wrestling with uh, trying to grow in their Christian faith and advance. And I wanted to shoot from the hip, if you'll allow me to do that. I wanted to speak pretty plainly about, again, trying to live this life we call Christianity. I want to read something from a Revised Standard Version and the book of Philippians in the New Testament. It's about the middle of the New Testament, the second chapter in the 12th or 13th verse. I wanted to read a portion of that to you and make some comments if I could, if you'll allow me. And so it says, "Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you both to will and to work for his good pleasure." And that's an interesting verse and has a lot to say about the everyday living out of the Christian faith. Now, notice again, we have a dual source of strength involved in this verse here. The thought is that of two agencies: God, the divine agency, and the human will, the human agency. And both are working synergistically or cooperatively. That's my understanding of the scriptures. It is not one player, but two who are working mysteriously and in conjunction and in union with one another. In other words, God is working in my life as a Christian, but at the same time, I am working. Now this, again, upsets our Calvinist brothers, if you know anything about Calvinism, and it stresses, again, the activity of God, and we in no way want to minimize that or downplay that. But we're talking here again about a dual partnership, if I can use that expression, involved in the living out of the Christian life. And so he says there again, work out your own salvation. You have been born again by the Spirit of God. There's been a spiritual transformation occurring inside of you, and you are to work it out. God's supernatural work has occurred in your soul, and it is your responsibility to work it out. But at the same time, don't stress and don't think that your religion is a religion which is merit-based. Like our Catholic friends, it is not sacramental in the sense of doing things in order to obtain God's favor and heaven. Rather, understand that it is God who is at work in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. The Holy Spirit is working in our lives while we are working out our faith. You are never going to grow as a Christian until you take hold of that truth that you have your part to play, if I can say it like that. I don't like to say it like that because it's not as though these are two separate forces working independent of one another, but rather it is intertwined and intermixed, commingled, and God is working in us. I can relax in the sense that God is working in me, and yet at the same time I am entirely responsible for living out this life. And what I'm getting at here is, again, so therefore I have to own up to my responsibilities and do that which I am called to do. I have to live out this faith. Work out your salvation. That's what I have to do. I have to work it out. And the way that I work it out, the way practically it all comes to be, is by, again, developing certain ways of living, developing holy habits, and doing that which I know I have to do. It's amazing how we understand this in certain areas, and we seem to be utterly clueless in other areas. You know, I realize every day I need to get up and I need to brush my teeth. I learned that, I don't know when, I must have been 3 or 4 years old. I don't remember, because it goes all the way back to the beginning, just like you, right? You remember when you first learned to brush your teeth? Well, probably your mother, your father, somebody told you, brush your teeth. Did you brush your teeth when you come sit at the kitchen table? And you hem haw and this and that. You have to brush your teeth every day. You have to wash your face every day. Maybe some of our adolescents need to be reminded of these things. You have to comb your hair. You know, when they had combs, right? I still carry one, believe it or not. I don't have much to work with. Other people just off they go, right? Or they don't even do that. They just throw a hat on their head. But there has to be, again, a routine in every area of life. And why would we therefore think that the Christian is exempt from that? We're not exempt from routines. We're not exempt from practical responsibilities. In other words, I think we can safely say that God is not going to get us out of bed. Now, I woke up early this morning. It was still dark. And I thought it was earlier than it was. And I don't like to glance at the clock when I get up because I know it'll be harder to go back to sleep. But I thought, I wonder what time it is. Well, it was later than I thought. And I'm of a particular conviction, and you can think it's rubbish if you want, that God actually wakes me up. I wouldn't say necessarily every day. I have to think about that. But there are times I really, truly believe that the Holy Spirit woke me up. And I'm in the habit of praying in the mornings. You'll see that, pat myself on the back, but that's just what I do, and I've done it for years. And the Spirit of God, I believe, at times wakes me up. I believe He woke me up today because there's certain things I need to do. I wasn't intending on doing this video, but there are other responsibilities I need to do before I head out. And God will wake us up. This is how I will say it. But He won't get us up. God will wake you up, but He won't get you up. He'll provide water, but He won't wash your face for you. He'll make sure that you have access to the Scriptures, but He won't pick them up and put them in your lap for you to read. You have to do that. See where I'm going with all of this? Forgive me if I sound like an old school master. We have to do that, right? He might wake me up on Sunday morning and say, you know, it's Sunday, worship day, but He's not going to drive me to church. He's not going to push me in the shower. He's not going to put the cereal in my mouth or whatever, right? He'll provide the food. He'll provide the bed. He'll provide the shelter. He'll even provide the place of worship. He'll provide the preacher. He'll provide the Scriptures. He'll provide the hymnody. But you have to sing. You have to listen. You have to worship. Let me just briefly list a few things that are, I think, really obvious, but something to think about, okay? If you want order in your life, you have to make it happen. You rely on His Spirit, but no one's going to clean your house for you unless you hire somebody, right? General order. I'm just talking generally. General order to your life. I straightened up a table in my living room next to my chair. I used to laugh at my mother because she always had this clutter next to her chair in her living room. And lo and behold, I have the same clutter. If I'm not careful, I just have papers and papers. Well, I got sick and tired of it. I didn't even care what the papers had on them anymore. I literally threw them away because enough was enough. There had to be order. God didn't reach down out of heaven and throw those papers away, pick them up and throw them away. I had to do that. General order. Praying regularly. How are you ever going to grow? How am I ever going to grow unless I learn to talk to God? And I've got to do that every day. I shouldn't say got to do it. It's my joy to do it. I need it like I need to breathe. Prayer is the very blood in our veins as Christians. It's the very life of God. It is my relationship with God, where I talk to Him and I listen to Him. So there needs to be general order. There needs to be a regular time of prayer, regular Bible study, regular Bible reading every day. Most Christians do not read their Bibles. Most professing Christians do not read their Bibles. How are you ever going to learn? You don't know where to begin. Close your eyes, bow your head, and ask God to show you by His Spirit, and open that book up. Open it up right to the middle. Open it up to Psalms. Start reading. Read a verse. One verse a day. One. Now that's not too difficult. Regular Bible reading every day. God's not going to do that for me again. I have to do that. And it becomes more of a joy. You'll never be a strong Christian unless you're in the Word. The Word's in you. How's the Word going to get in you if you're not in the Word, right? Sometimes God miraculously and mercifully will speak something to us and cause us to recall something that we've read and heard a long time ago. But we need to be in the Word. Going to church. Many evangelical Christians in the West go once or twice a month if they're lucky. Then we have the see and eat Christians, we call them, like Christmas and Easter Christians. You think God's really impressed with that? I don't know how many times I've had Easter services and Christmas Eve services, and there they show up again. You know, old Joe comes in again with his friend. I'm glad that they're there. But really, we need to be people who learn to get out of bed on Sunday morning, who orient their schedule and make that a priority. It's not a priority unless you make it a priority. Unless you say, I'm not going to work that day, I'm going to have to talk to some people at work, I'm going to have to do this, I'm going to have to rearrange that. Yes, I do know there are schedules and there are exceptions, but we should not try to live by the exception. We should not deliberately become the exception. And again, I'm preaching here, but bear with me. Worship is so critical. Go to church, we call it. In other words, be the church on the Lord's day. And it is His day. It's not goof-off day. It's not my day. It's His day. And He deserves that, doesn't He? He deserves that time of recognition and acknowledgement, praise and honor, thanksgiving for all the blessings He gives us. Can't you give at least 1 hour? Can I give at least 1 hour to the glory of God, to recognize Him, to sit under the ministry of the Word, to give a portion of my income to Him? Yes, that leads to the next one, giving a portion. Doesn't He deserve 1/10 of my income? There's a separate video we can make regarding that, but it's never going to happen. There's never going to be enough money. There's never going to be enough. There's always some area where I could invest it in and say, this is important right now. That's true. But He's the one that made it all possible. And you give to your local congregation, the place that you call church. Make that your first priority, and yet God may impress you to give in other areas in different amounts. Reading Christian material. Get off that Facebook if you need to. Read something that will inspire you and encourage you and educate you. You need that. And lastly, I jotted down here, calling on others. And what I mean by that is, no one's going to pick up that phone and hand it into your hand, put it in your hand. God's not going to do that. You've got to dial that number and call that person. You've got to reach out to people and not live in your own self-enclosed world. I know people that live in their own isolated world. I saw this woman going into her garage the other day down the street. She's driving down the road. She didn't even look at me. I'm walking my dog down the street. She goes right on in, turns left into her driveway. The garage door goes up. She goes in, the garage door comes down. That's the way we live our lives so much of the time. How is that going to change? Well, by acknowledging the ones around me, by reaching out to the ones around me. You think God's going to change that in you and in me? He's not going to change that in me. He gives me the capacity to live out, to work out my own salvation. That's what he's saying right there. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. In other words, in the fear, the recognition of God, that he's watching you, that he loves you, but he's holding you to account. And at the same time, enjoy the fact that he's working it out in you and through you. The Spirit of God is working. So blessings to you. I hope this wasn't too strident today. Maybe there's something there we needed to hear, right? Blessings once again.